Daeho Kim wiped sweat from his forehead as he stepped back from the training dummy. The metal target was dented in several places, but not nearly as much as it should have been. Around him, other cadets were finishing their combat drills with much better results. "Time's up," called Senior Cadet So-Young Park. She walked between the training stations, checking each cadet's work. When she reached Daeho, she shook her head slightly. "Better than last week, but you need to put more power behind your strikes." Daeho nodded and looked down at his hands. After 2 years at the Terran Military Academy, he was still just average. Not the worst in his class, but definitely not the best. His friend Jinwoo Lee gave him an encouraging pat on the shoulder. "Don't worry about it," Jinwoo whispered. "You'll get there." The training hall was busy with the sounds of metal hitting metal and cadets breathing hard. Europa Station orbited Jupiter, and through the large windows, Daeho could see the giant planet's red spot swirling in the distance. It was a peaceful sight that always made him feel calm. That peace was about to end. The lights in the training hall suddenly went red. A loud alarm started blaring throughout the station. All the cadets stopped what they were doing and looked around in confusion. "This is not a drill," came Colonel Woo Jin Choi's voice over the speakers. "Unknown ships have entered our space. All cadets report to emergency stations immediately." So Young started shouting orders. "You heard the colonel. Move, move, move." Daeho had never heard real fear in his squad leader's voice before. She was always calm and in control. But now her face was pale and her hands were shaking slightly as she grabbed her equipment. The cadets ran through the corridors of Europa Station. Emergency lights flashed red and white. Other people were running too. Instructors, maintenance workers, and communication staff. Everyone looked scared. Through the windows, Daeho could see ships in the distance. They were unlike anything he had ever seen before. The alien vessels were dark and angular, with strange curves that hurt to look at. They moved through space like hungry predators. "Krillians," breathed one of the older cadets. "I heard about them in history class." Daeho knew the name too. The Krillians were warriors from beyond human space. They had natural armor plating and were much larger than humans. Most importantly, they had never lost a battle. The station shook violently. The lights went out for a few seconds before emergency power kicked in. Somewhere in the distance, Daeho could hear the sound of metal being torn apart. "They're cutting through the hull," So Young said grimly. "Everyone to the emergency bunkers." But before they could move, a new sound filled the air. It was like thunder mixed with the roar of a wild animal. The walls around them started to glow orange, then white hot. Something was burning through the station's armor like it was paper. A section of the wall exploded inward. Smoke and sparks filled the corridor. Through the hole stepped the largest creature Daeho had ever seen. The Krillian stood nearly 3 meters tall. Its skin looked like gray stone with dark veins running through it. It had 4 arms, each ending in clawed hands. Its head was elongated with glowing yellow eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It wore armor that seemed to be made from the same material as its skin. Behind the first alien came others. They moved with deadly grace despite their size. Each one carried weapons that looked like a cross between a sword and a lightning rod. "Humans," the lead Krillian said in perfect English. Its voice was deep and rumbling like distant thunder. "You will surrender now." Colonel Woo Jin Choi appeared at the other end of the corridor with several armed guards.
"Stand down,"
he shouted. "This is Terran space." The Krillian leader tilted its massive head. "This was Terran space. Now it belongs to us." It raised one of its weapons. "I am Commander Veltar of the Krillian Third Fleet. You will lay down your weapons and submit to our authority." "Never," Colonel Choi replied. He raised his rifle. What happened next was over in seconds. Veltar moved faster than anything that large should be able to move. His weapon crackled with energy as he struck. Colonel Choi and his guards were knocked unconscious before they could fire a single shot. "Take them," Veltar ordered his soldiers. "The strong ones will fight for our entertainment. The weak ones will serve." So Young grabbed Daeho and Jinwoo by their arms. "This way," she whispered urgently. "There's a maintenance shaft behind the training hall." They crept back the way they had come, trying to stay quiet. Behind them, they could hear the Krillians moving through the station. There were sounds of people screaming and metal being torn apart. The training hall was empty now. So Young led them to a small door hidden behind some equipment. "Inside," she ordered. "Quick." The maintenance shaft was cramped and dark. They crawled through it for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Finally, they reached a small room filled with pipes and electrical equipment. "We should be safe here for now," So Young said quietly. She activated a small emergency radio. "This is Senior Cadet Park. Anyone out there?" Static answered her for a long time. Then a weak voice came through. "Park? This is Communications Officer Mina Song. I'm in the command center. Most of the station has been taken. The Krillians are gathering prisoners in the main hangar." "What do they want?" So Young asked. "They're talking about some kind of demonstration," Mina replied. "Something about proving human weakness. I think they want to fight our people in some kind of ritual combat." Daeho felt sick to his stomach. He had read about the Krillians in his history classes. They believed that physical strength was the most important thing in the universe. They conquered other species by defeating their champions in single combat. "How many of them are there?" So Young asked. "Maybe 50 on the station," Mina said. "But there are more ships coming." "A whole fleet." So Young turned to Daeho and Jinwoo. "We need to stay hidden until help arrives." "What if help doesn't come?" Jinwoo asked quietly. So Young didn't answer, but Daeho could see the truth in her eyes. No help was coming. Europa Station was too far from Earth. By the time anyone realized what had happened, it would be over. Through the ventilation system, they could hear voices echoing through the station. The Krillians were moving their prisoners and setting up their arena. Soon, people would start dying to prove a point about alien superiority. Daeho closed his eyes and tried to think of something, anything, that could help. But he was just an average cadet with average skills. What could he possibly do against creatures that had conquered half the galaxy? The sound of alien voices grew louder. The demonstration was about to begin. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the station's corridors. From their hiding place in the maintenance room, Daeho could hear the Krillians moving equipment and shouting orders in their harsh language. The aliens were busy with something big. "I'm going to try to get closer to the hangar," So Young whispered. "We need to know what they're planning." Jinwoo shook his head. "Too dangerous. They'll catch you. Someone has to see what's happening," So Young replied. She checked her small sidearm, though they all knew it would be useless against Krillian armor. "Stay here. If I don't come back in an hour, try to reach the escape pods." Before either of them could argue, she slipped out through another maintenance hatch. Daeho and Jinwoo were alone in the dark room with only the sound of alien voices for company. 20 minutes later, a new sound filled the station. It was deep and powerful, like the horn of some giant creature. The alien voices stopped talking and everything went quiet. "Humans of this pathetic station," a voice boomed through the speaker system. It was different from Commander Veltar's voice, older and more commanding. "I am High Nexarch Bolran of the Krillian Empire. Your leaders have been brought before me." Daeho felt his heart sink. If the Krillians had captured Colonel Choi and the other officers, there was no one left to organize any resistance. "Your species amuses us," the voice continued. "You build weapons that strike from great distances like cowards. You hide behind armor and shields instead of trusting in your own strength. Today we will show the galaxy why humans are unworthy of the stars." There was a pause, then the voice spoke again. "In 1 hour, your strongest warriors will face our champions in honorable combat. We will use only traditional weapons, blades and clubs, as warriors have fought for thousands of years. When your champions fall, the survivors will serve the Krillian Empire." The transmission ended. Daeho looked at Jinwoo in the dim emergency lighting. His friend's face was pale with fear. "Honorable combat," Jinwoo whispered. "They're going to make our people fight and die for entertainment." From somewhere in the station came the sound of metal being moved and welded. The aliens were building their arena. 30 minutes passed before So Young returned. She crawled back through the maintenance hatch, her uniform torn and dirty. "I saw it," she said quietly. "They've cleared out the main hangar and set up a fighting circle. There are hundreds of them watching. They brought prisoners from all over the station." "How many humans?" Daeho asked. "Maybe 60 or 70 still alive," So Young replied. "They have Colonel Choi, most of the instructors, and the senior cadets. They're keeping them in cages like animals." She sat down heavily and rubbed her face with her hands. "The Krillians are excited. This is like a festival for them. They're betting on how long each human will last." "What about weapons?" Jinwoo asked. "What are they giving our people to fight with?" "Swords, axes, spears," So Young said. "Old-style weapons made by human blacksmiths. The Krillians think projectile weapons are for cowards. They want to prove they can beat us in fair combat." Daeho had studied military history. He knew that traditional weapons required years of training to use properly. Most of the people on the station were engineers, communications experts, and cadets like himself. Very few had real experience with swords or axes. It's not fair at all, he said. The Krillians have been fighting with blades for centuries. Their natural armor protects them, and they're twice our size and strength. That's the point, Seung replied grimly. They want to humiliate us completely before they destroy human civilization. Through the ventilation system, they could hear more sounds from the hangar. The aliens were testing their arena, making sure everything was ready for their show. There has to be something we can do, Jinwoo said desperately. Some way to help. So Young shook her head. What can 3 cadets do against 50 Krillian warriors? We should try to reach the escape pods while they're distracted. But even as she said it, Daeho could hear the doubt in her voice. The Krillians would have found the escape pods by now. There was nowhere to run. The combat is starting, came High Nexarch Bulren's voice over the speakers again. We call forth the first human champion. From the hangar came the sound of thousands of alien voices cheering. The show had begun. For the next hour, terrible sounds echoed through the station. Metal clashing against metal. Alien cheers. Human screams. Each fight lasted only a few minutes before ending in silence. That was Instructor Kim, So Young whispered after one particularly loud cheer from the aliens. He taught advanced combat. If the instructors were losing this quickly, what chance did anyone else have? The Krillians weren't just stronger and better armed. They were also more experienced. They had probably fought dozens of different species across the galaxy. Next champion, came Veltar's voice. Bring forward the one called Colonel Choi. The sounds of the next battle were even shorter than the previous ones. Colonel Choi had been a good soldier, but he was no match for creatures that lived for combat. Is there no human with courage? High Nexarch Bulren's voice mocked them. Your leaders fall like children. Perhaps we should simply execute the rest and be done with this pathetic display. Wait, came Veltar's voice. There is still sport to be had. Bring me the strongest of the remaining humans. More sounds of combat followed, but Daeho could tell that the Krillians were getting bored. The fights were ending faster and faster. Soon they would run out of prisoners and the massacre would begin. I have to do something, Daeho said suddenly. Jinwoo grabbed his arm. Don't be stupid. You'll just get yourself killed. We're all gonna die anyway, Daeho replied. At least this way, maybe I can buy some time. Maybe help will come? With what? So Young demanded. You're not even the best fighter in our class. Those things will tear you apart. She was right, of course. Daeho had never been exceptional at anything. His combat scores were average. His physical fitness was average. His tactical knowledge was average. He was exactly the kind of person who had no business fighting alien champions. But as he listened to the sounds of his fellow humans dying in the arena below, something changed inside him. Maybe it was anger at the unfairness of it all. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was just the refusal to give up without trying. I have to try, he said quietly. Before either of his friends could stop him, Daeho crawled toward the maintenance hatch that led toward the hangar. Behind him he could hear So Young and Jinwoo whispering urgently, but he didn't turn back. The maintenance shaft was dark and cramped. As he crawled through it, the sounds of the arena grew louder. Alien voices cheering, the clash of weapons, the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. Finally, he reached a grate that looked down into the main hangar. The sight below made his stomach turn. The Krillians had built a circular arena in the center of the hangar. Around it sat hundreds of aliens, their yellow eyes glowing in the bright lights. In cages along one wall were the surviving humans, maybe 30 people left. In the center of the arena stood Commander Veltar. He was even larger than Daeho remembered, his stone-like skin scarred from countless battles. In his forehands he held curved blades that gleamed like silver lightning. At his feet lay the body of Senior Cadet Park Ji-hoon, one of the best fighters in the academy. Surely one human remains with courage, Veltar called out mockingly. Or are you all cowards who only fight from hiding? High Nexarch Bulren rose from his seat. Perhaps we have seen enough. Execute the rest and prepare to move on. No, Veltar said, raising one clawed hand. Honor demands that we give them one final chance. If no human will face me, then we end this. But our traditions must be observed. Daeho looked down at the scene below. This was it. This was the moment when humanity would be proven weak and cowardly in the eyes of the galaxy, unless someone did something impossible. He started looking for a way down to the arena floor. Daeho found a service ladder that led down from the maintenance level to the hangar floor. His hands were shaking as he climbed down, but he tried to stay quiet. The Krillians were all focused on their arena and their prisoners. The hangar was huge, much larger than it looked from above. Broken furniture and debris were scattered everywhere from the alien attack. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. 10 seconds, High Nexarch Bolron announced. Then we end this pathetic display. Daeho took a deep breath and stepped out from behind a damaged cargo container. Wait, he called out in a voice that cracked slightly. I'll fight. The entire hangar went silent. Hundreds of yellow alien eyes turned to look at him. For a moment, Daeho felt like running back to his hiding place. Commander Veltar stared at him for several seconds, then began to laugh. It was a deep rumbling sound like rocks falling down a mountain. This? Veltar said, pointing at Daeho with one of his blades. This small whelpling dares to challenge me. The other Krillians joined in the laughter. Some of them were pointing at Daeho and making jokes in their own language. From the tone, he could tell they weren't compliments. I am Commander Veltar, the giant alien said. I have defeated the champions of 17 different worlds. I have taken more than 300 heads in single combat. And you, what are you? Daeho walked slowly toward the arena. His legs felt like water, but he kept moving. I'm Cadet Daeho Kim of the Terran Military Academy. This brought fresh laughter from the aliens. Even High Nexarch Bolron seemed amused. A cadet, Veltar repeated mockingly. Not even a real warrior. Just a student playing at war. From the human prisoners came sounds of dismay. Daeho could see Colonel Choi shaking his head sadly. The other survivors looked at him with pity. They knew this was just going to be another quick execution. Choose your weapon, little human, Veltar said. He gestured to a table near the arena where various human-made weapons were displayed. Though it will make no difference. Daeho approached the weapon table. There were swords of different lengths, axes with sharp edges, spears with metal tips, and even some clubs with metal studs. All of them looked well-made and deadly. He picked up a sword and tested its weight. It was heavier than the practice weapons he had used in training. The balance felt wrong in his hands. He had never been very good with swords, even in class. He tried an axe next. It was even heavier and more awkward. The spears were too long for someone his size. The clubs might work, but they required getting very close to an enemy. Not a good idea when fighting something with 4 arms and longer reach. As he stood there trying to decide, Daeho looked around the hangar. The Krillian attack had left debris everywhere. Broken chairs, twisted metal, shattered glass. The aliens had smashed through walls and furniture like they were made of paper. His eyes stopped on something near the arena. A heavy metal chair that had been thrown against the wall during the attack. One of its legs had been torn free and was lying on the floor nearby. The end where it had broken off was sharp and jagged. An idea began to form in Daeho's mind. It was probably a stupid idea, but then again, any human fighting a Krillian champion was probably going to die anyway. Have you chosen? Veltar asked impatiently. Or will you die with empty hands? Instead of answering, Daeho walked past the weapon table to where the broken chair leg lay on the floor. He picked it up and tested its weight. It was about as long as his arm and made of solid metal. The broken end was sharp enough to cut. The laughter from the Krillians stopped. What is this? Veltar demanded. You dare to face me with scrap metal? It's a weapon, Daeho said simply. High Nexarch Bolron leaned forward in his seat. This is an insult. Give the human a proper weapon or execute him now. But Veltar held up one hand. No. Our challenge was to face any human with traditional weapons. The whelpling has chosen his weapon. By our own laws, the combat must proceed. Several of the other Krillians made angry noises, but Veltar silenced them with a look. Besides, he added with cruel amusement, it will be more entertaining to see him die with his chosen stick. Daeho stepped into the arena. The floor was marked with a large circle painted in white. Inside the circle were dark stains from the previous fights. The rules are simple, Veltar announced as he entered the circle. We fight until one of us can no longer continue. No projectile weapons, no energy weapons, only blades and courage. The Krillian commander was even more impressive up close. His stone-like skin was covered in scars from old battles. His forearms moved independently, each one holding a curved blade. His yellow eyes glowed with confident malice, You know, Veltar said quietly so only Deho could hear. I could make this quick and painless if you kneel now. A swift cut and it will be over. Deho adjusted his grip on the chair leg. No thanks. Veltar shrugged with two of his shoulders. Your choice, little human. The aliens around the arena began to chant something in their own language. It had a rhythmic, hypnotic quality that made Deho's skin crawl. Begin, High Nexarch Bolron commanded. Veltar moved immediately, faster than anything that large should be able to move. His blades sliced through the air in perfect arcs. Each one aimed to end the fight with a single strike. Deho threw himself to one side, rolling across the arena floor. One of Veltar's blades missed his head by centimeters. The Krillians cheered. They liked seeing their prey run. Veltar followed up with a series of precise cuts, his forearms working in perfect coordination. Each strike was placed exactly where Deho would be if he moved in the expected way. But Deho wasn't moving the way he was supposed to. In training, they had learned formal footwork and proper stances. Now he forgot all of that and just tried to stay alive. He ducked, rolled, and scrambled in ways that no sword-fighting manual would recommend. Stand and fight like a warrior. Veltar roared, frustrated that his perfect technique wasn't working against such graceless movement. Instead of standing, Deho stayed low and used the chair leg to deflect one of the alien's strikes. The metal rang like a bell, and the impact sent painful vibrations up his arm. But the makeshift weapon held. Veltar pressed his attack, using his superior reach and strength to drive Deho back toward the edge of the arena. The human was clearly outmatched. It was only a matter of time, but something strange was happening. The longer the fight went on, the more frustrated Veltar became. His precise, centuries-old techniques were designed to fight other skilled warriors who followed the rules of combat. Deho wasn't following any rules. When Veltar expected him to parry, Deho ducked. When the alien anticipated a retreat, the human rolled forward between his legs. When Veltar tried to corner him, Deho used the scattered debris as cover. Fight properly, Veltar snarled, his calm confidence beginning to crack. From the watching Krillians came confused murmurs. Their champion was obviously superior, but the battle was taking much longer than expected. The human's style was ugly and graceless, but it was also completely unpredictable. Deho used the chair leg in ways no weapon was meant to be used. He hooked Veltar's blades, used it as a lever to throw debris, and even swung it like a club to target the joints in the alien's armor. Most importantly, he kept moving, never staying in one place long enough for Veltar to set up his perfect killing strikes. The Krillian commander was breathing hard now, his stone-like skin gleaming with sweat. This was taking far too long. He should have ended this pathetic human minutes ago. In his growing anger, Veltar made his first real mistake. He overextended one of his strikes, trying to finish the fight with a dramatic killing blow. Deho saw the opening and took it. He stepped inside Veltar's reach and brought the chair leg up hard, striking the alien's wrist. One of the curved blades went spinning across the arena floor. For the first time since the battle began, the watching Krillians went completely silent. Veltar stared at his empty hand in shock. Then his yellow eyes turned back to Deho, filled with pure rage. You dare, he whispered. The real fight was about to begin. Veltar's rage was terrible to see. The massive Krillian commander had gone from amused confidence to frustrated anger to pure fury. His remaining three blades moved faster now, driven by emotion rather than technique. I will take your head slowly, Veltar snarled as he advanced. You will scream for the quick death I offered, but anger made him sloppy. The precise economical movements he had used before were replaced by wild, powerful strikes that left him off balance. Deho found it easier to avoid the attacks, even though they would have cut him in half if they connected. The watching Krillians were no longer cheering. They sat in confused silence as their champion struggled against a creature they considered barely worth killing. Some of them were pointing and whispering to each other in their harsh language. Deho used the chair leg to hook another of Veltar's blades, twisting his whole body to wrench it aside. The alien was so much stronger that Deho couldn't actually disarm him again, but he could deflect the strikes and throw off the timing. This is not how warriors fight, Veltar roared. You roll in the dirt like an animal. I fight to win, Deho replied, breathing hard. That simple statement seemed to enrage the alien even more. In Krillian culture, how you fought was just as important as victory. Honor and technique mattered more than mere survival. But Daeho didn't care about honor. He cared about staying alive and protecting the other prisoners. If that meant fighting dirty, so be it. Veltar lunged forward with all 3 remaining blades striking at once. It should have been impossible to avoid, but Daeho did something no trained warrior would ever do. He threw himself flat on his back and slid across the arena floor between the alien's legs. As he slid past, he swung the chair leg upward, striking Veltar behind the knee. The impact sent vibrations through the metal that made Daeho's hand sting, but the alien stumbled and nearly fell. The Krillians in the audience made sounds of dismay. Their champion was being made to look foolish by inferior tactics. Veltar spun around, his yellow eyes blazing with hatred. "Stand up and fight." Instead, Daeho grabbed a piece of broken debris and threw it at the alien's head. Veltar knocked it aside easily with one blade, but the distraction gave Daeho time to get back to his feet. "That is not permitted," High Nexarch Bolran shouted from his seat. "He used no projectile weapon," Veltar replied grimly. "The debris is part of the arena. By our laws, it is allowed." Even in his rage, the Krillian commander was bound by their strict codes of honor. But Daeho could see that it was eating at him to fight this way. The battle continued, but it was unlike anything the Krillians had ever seen. Where they expected formal dueling, they saw desperate scrambling. Where they anticipated noble warrior techniques, they witnessed practical survival tactics. Daeho used everything around him. When Veltar cornered him against the arena wall, he kicked off it to leap over the alien's head. When the commander tried to use his superior reach, Daeho stayed inside his guard where the long blades were less effective. Most importantly, he used the chair leg in ways that confused and frustrated his opponent. Instead of treating it like a sword or spear, he used it as a club, a hook, a lever, and even a shield. The improvised weapon's irregular shape made it impossible for Veltar to predict how it would move. "Your technique is an insult to all warriors." Veltar panted as they circled each other. "It's working, though," Daeho pointed out. That was the problem. From the Krillian perspective, their entire culture was built on the idea that proper warrior training and superior physical gifts would always triumph. Watching their champion struggle against someone using inferior methods was deeply disturbing. Daeho could see doubt creeping into some of the alien faces in the audience. If humans could fight this effectively with improvised weapons and crude tactics, what did that say about Krillian superiority? The psychological pressure was affecting Veltar too. He had built his entire identity around being a perfect warrior. Having that perfection challenged by someone he considered beneath notice was destroying his confidence. In desperation, Veltar attempted a complex spinning attack that should have cut Daeho down from 3 angles simultaneously. It was a move he had perfected over decades of training. Daeho responded by doing something completely unexpected. He fell backward deliberately, letting his feet fly up to kick Veltar in the stomach as the alien spun over him. The kick didn't hurt the armored alien much, but it sent him stumbling past where Daeho had been standing. When Veltar tried to recover his balance, he stepped on some of the debris scattered around the arena floor. For just a moment, the mighty Krillian commander looked awkward and off balance. The watching aliens made sounds of distress at seeing their champion reduced to such gracelessness. Daeho rolled away and got back to his feet. Both fighters were breathing hard now. The battle had gone on much longer than anyone expected. "You cannot win," Veltar said, though he sounded less certain than before. "I am stronger, faster, better armed. Eventually you will make a mistake." "Maybe," Daeho admitted. "But you're getting tired too." And frustrated. When was the last time a fight took this long? The question hit home. Veltar had expected to end this in seconds, not minutes. His perfect techniques were being neutralized by crude but effective tactics. Worse, the longer the fight continued, the more it looked like the human might actually have a chance. "I will not be defeated by a mere student," Veltar declared. He launched into another series of attacks, but now Daeho could see the pattern. The alien was reverting to combinations he had used before, falling back on muscle memory when his creativity failed. That predictability was exactly what Daeho needed. When Veltar began his favorite 3-strike combination, Daeho was ready. He ducked the first blade, deflected the second with the chair leg, and stepped inside the third. For a brief moment, he was close enough to smell the alien's strange metallic scent. Instead of backing away as he had done before, Daeho pressed forward. He brought the chair leg up in a short, sharp strike that caught Veltar's second blade near the hilt. The impact sent a shock through both fighters, but Deho was ready for it. He twisted the chair leg, using it as a lever to wrench the blade from Veltar's grip. The second weapon clattered across the arena floor, joining the first. Now Veltar was down to only 2 blades. For the first time in the fight, the odds were getting closer to even. The watching Krillians were no longer silent. Angry voices rose from the audience as they saw their champion being systematically disarmed by inferior tactics. Impossible, High Nexarch Balran muttered. But it was happening. The perfect Krillian warrior was being beaten by human adaptability and refusal to follow the rules. Veltar looked at his 2 remaining weapons, then at the human standing across from him with his crude metal club. For the first time since the battle began, uncertainty flickered in the alien's yellow eyes. The fight was far from over, but something fundamental had changed. Both fighters knew it. The question was what Veltar would do when perfection failed him. The arena had become completely silent except for the heavy breathing of both fighters. Veltar stood with his 2 remaining blades, his stone-like skin gleaming with sweat. Across from him, Deho gripped the chair leg with hands that were starting to bleed from the constant impacts. Both fighters were exhausted, but Veltar was also something he had never been before in combat. Afraid. Not afraid of death. Krillian warriors were trained from birth to face death with honor, but afraid of losing to someone who fought without honor, without technique, without any of the things that made a true warrior. This ends now, Veltar declared, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. He had been holding back his most devastating technique, saving it for an opponent worthy of the honor, but desperation had replaced pride. If crude tactics could defeat perfection, then perhaps it was time to abandon perfection. Veltar began to move in ways Deho had not seen before. Instead of the precise formal strikes he had been using, the alien commander started to improvise. He used his superior size and strength more directly, trying to overwhelm rather than outskill his opponent. For a moment, it worked. Deho found himself driven back as Veltar pressed forward with powerful, unpredictable attacks. The chair leg rang like a bell as it deflected strike after strike. But improvisation was something humans were better at than Krillians, and Deho had been improvising from the very beginning. When Veltar attempted a wild overhead strike with both blades, Deho didn't try to block or dodge. Instead, he stepped forward and to the side, letting the blades pass over his shoulder as he moved inside the alien's guard. The chair leg came up in a short, vicious arc that caught Veltar just below his armored chest plate. The impact drove the air from the alien's lungs and sent him staggering backward. From the watching Krillians came sounds of dismay. Their champion was being systematically broken down by someone they had dismissed as worthless. "Finish it," High Nexarch Balran commanded. "End this shameful display." But Veltar was past listening to orders. His entire worldview was crumbling. Everything he had been taught about warrior superiority and proper combat was being proven wrong by a human cadet with a piece of scrap metal. In his confusion and rage, Veltar made the mistake that cost him everything. He lunged forward with both remaining blades in a desperate attempt to end the fight. It was an all-or-nothing attack that left him completely committed and unable to defend himself. Deho saw the opening he had been waiting for throughout the entire battle. Instead of backing away from the attack, he dropped low and moved forward, sliding between Veltar's outstretched arms. The alien's blades passed harmlessly over his head as he brought the chair leg up with all his remaining strength. The jagged, broken end of the improvised weapon punched through a gap in Veltar's natural armor at the base of his skull. It was a weak point that the alien's own anatomy created, a place where the stone-like plates didn't quite meet. Veltar's yellow eyes went wide with shock. He tried to speak, but only a wet, choking sound came out. The massive alien commander swayed on his feet for a moment, then collapsed forward onto the arena floor. The hangar fell completely silent. Deho stood over the fallen alien, still holding the chair leg. Blood dripped from the improvised weapon onto the arena floor, mixing with the stains from previous battles. For several long seconds, nobody moved. The watching Krillians stared in disbelief at their fallen champion. The human prisoners looked equally shocked. Even Deho seemed surprised that his desperate plan had actually worked. Then High Nexarch Balran rose slowly from his seat. The ancient alien's face was a mask of cold fury and something else. Fear. Impossible, he whispered. Veltar was undefeated. He had taken 300 heads in single combat. Deho looked up at the alien leader, his chest still heaving from exhaustion. 301 now, I guess. The simple statement sent a ripple of shock through the Krillian audience. Not just because their champion had fallen, but because of how casually the human dismissed the achievement. High Nexarch Bolran descended from his seat and walked to the edge of the arena. He looked down at Veltar's body, then at the human who had killed him. "What manner of creature are you?" he asked quietly. "I'm just a cadet," Deho replied. "Average grades, average skills. Nothing special." If anything, this answer frightened the alien leader more than boasting would have. If an average human could defeat their greatest champion, what could their elite warriors accomplish? "You fought without honor," High Nexarch Bolran said accusingly. "You used crude tactics and improvised weapons. You showed no respect for the noble art of combat." Deho shrugged, still catching his breath. "I fought to win. I fought to save my people. Your honor doesn't mean anything to me." Around the arena, other Krillians were beginning to mutter among themselves. Some were pointing at Deho and making agitated gestures. Others were backing away from the arena as if the human might attack them next. "Release the prisoners," Colonel Choi called out from his cage. His voice was hoarse but determined. "Your champion fell in fair combat according to your own rules." High Nexarch Bolran looked at the surviving humans, then at his own warriors. He could see doubt in their faces. If humans could fight this effectively with improvised weapons and dishonorable tactics, how many Krillians would die in a real war? "This changes nothing," he declared, though his voice lacked conviction. "One victory does not—" "It changes everything," Deho interrupted. He was still holding the bloody chair leg, and his casual confidence was clearly unsettling the aliens. "You came here to prove humans were weak. Instead, your best warrior got beaten by an average cadet with a piece of scrap metal." The truth of it hung in the air like a physical presence. Every alien in the hangar could see what had happened. Their champion, their perfect warrior, had been defeated by someone they considered barely worth killing. High Nexarch Bolran was quiet for a long time, his alien features unreadable. Finally, he spoke to his warriors in their own language. The tone was sharp and commanding. The Krillians began to move immediately, but not toward the human prisoners. Instead, they headed for the exits. Within minutes, they were filing out of the hangar and back to their ships. "You are leaving?" Colonel Choi asked in amazement. High Nexarch Bolran turned back one final time. "Any species capable of such resourceful savagery is too dangerous to enslave. We will not make the mistake of underestimating human adaptability again." He paused at the hangar entrance. "Tell your people this. The Krillian Empire will not trouble humanity again, but neither will we warn others about your true nature. Let them discover it for themselves." With that ominous promise, he was gone. The surviving humans emerged from their cages, helped by Krillian guards who seemed eager to finish their duties and leave. So Young Park and Jinwoo Lee came running from the maintenance areas where they had been hiding. "Deho," Jinwoo shouted. "You actually did it!" So Young looked at the chair leg still in Deho's hands, then at Veltar's body. "How?" she asked simply. Deho set down his improvised weapon and sat heavily on a piece of debris. Now that the adrenaline was fading, he was starting to realize just how close he had come to dying. "I stopped trying to fight like I was supposed to," he said quietly. "I started fighting like a human." Colonel Choi approached and put a hand on Deho's shoulder. "What you did today will be remembered for generations. You saved us all." But Deho was looking at the chair leg lying on the arena floor. A simple piece of scrap metal that had defeated the weapons of a warrior culture. It wasn't the weapon that had won the fight. It was the willingness to use whatever worked, honor be damned. "Maybe that's what makes us human," he said to himself. "We don't fight fair. We fight to survive." Outside the station, the Krillian fleet was already moving away from Jupiter's orbit. They had come to demonstrate human weakness and instead had discovered something far more disturbing: human adaptability. In the years that followed, other alien species would learn the same lesson. Humans didn't fight by the rules because they cared more about survival than honor. They would use improvised weapons, dirty tactics, and whatever else it took to win, and that perhaps was the most terrifying thing about them.